I'm so delighted to be here. I didn't know this existed. Isn't this fabulous? It's such a beautiful setting. Thank you all for coming out. Well, I've written several books, but these are two of my latest. And this one, which I'll show you right here, and I brought some with me if anyone's interested. It's called Love Poems for Dodie, and it's dedicated to my late wife, whom I lost to cancer in October of 2011. And I know that a lot of you ladies love a beautiful love story, and that's what this is about. It tells about our love story. My own situation was, when I was born, neither one of my parents wanted to be tied down with a child. They'd gotten divorced, and neither one of them wanted me. So my grandmother and grandfather on my mother's side raised me. And one day I overheard my mother screaming and cussing and yelling at my grandmother because my father had stopped by to visit and see how I was doing. She said, "I told you not to let that SOB near Joe. As far as he's concerned, he's dead." You know. And then I overheard the reason why they'd had the separation, the divorce, and that she'd had a nervous breakdown. She told him that, you know, you have a son. He said, "I don't care. I'll give you any amount of money. I found somebody else that I want. I don't want you." And it made me very cautious about saying I do to someone. I wanted to make sure that the person that I was saying that to was capable of giving me the same quality of love that I had in my heart. I just didn't want it to be a casual encounter that a year or so later we get bored with each other and we're out of it. That's kind of dumb. That goes on a lot too much today. But anyway, it made me very cautious, and as a result, believe it or not, and I came close a couple of times. I wore out a few track shoes, but I got married for the first time at the age of 63. And God provided me with the most beautiful, one of the most wonderful of His daughters, and I really was blessed. We had a whole 4 years and 3 months together before she was called home. So I'd like to share just a bit of what I have in Love Poems for Dodie. Then I have another book. I'll be very brief and share a little bit about that with you. I think you would find it interesting too. First of all, I got to tell you about my proposal. I had never been really big on proposing. I'd had girls propose to me, but I wasn't real big on getting down. I don't think I ever got down on my knee before this and proposed to somebody to get married. So I'd gotten to the point. By the way, Dodie and I had only dated for a month when I knew. I said, "This is who I've been looking for all of my life." You know, she's got everything and more of what I'd been looking for and been wanting. So we were at the park over on Central Avenue that leads over towards Treasure Island, and we were sitting on the bench talking. I got down on one knee, and I said, "Dodie, I've just got to ask you or I'm going to explode." I said, "I'm in love with you. You're everything that I've ever been looking for. And I need to know, would you please marry me?" And I said, "I hope you don't think I'm insane, and I hope you're not going to say no, because I've spent 42 years of my life looking for you, and honestly, I don't really have another 42 years left to still be looking." And she smiled and she said, "Of course I'll marry you, Joe. I love you too." So that was a beautiful way to start our relationship. Now, one of the neatest things was Dodie had a wonderful sense of humor, you know, and me being Irish, we just drove each other crazy with our humor. And as you know, when you go into taking chemo treatment, your hair falls out. So Dodie's hair had fallen out during the course of her chemo treatment, and she went completely bald. She had this beautiful brunette hair, but she went bald. And one day, I was getting ready to take her out to dinner, and she'd gotten dressed, and here this gorgeous blonde shows up. And I said, "And who are you?" You know? She said, "I'm your new wife. My name is Vicky." I said, "Well, hello, Vicky." And I said, "I'm really going to enjoy having you for my wife." And then I said, "Dodie, I've got to be honest with you." I said, "You're a gorgeous brunette, but you make a killer blonde." Now that's all I had to say. Over the course of the next few months, every month I had a different wife. I went to take her out to dinner. Here's a different blonde wig. And I said, "And who are you?" She said, "My name is Nancy, and I'm your new wife." I said, "Well, hi, Nancy. Welcome to my harem, H-A-I-R-E-M." I called her my harem. Well, in the course of the time, I wound up with 7 wives, including Dodie. And one of the really killer ones that got me was one day she'd gone out and bought one of those Raquel Welch wigs. Had the sexy look to it, you know. So I go to take her out to dinner that night, and there she is with the brand new, you know. And I said, "Wow." I said, "Who are you?" And she said, "My name is Raquel, and I'm your new wife." And I said, "Well, Raquel," I said, "you're gorgeous. I'm really going to enjoy having you as my wife." And she said, I said, "Oh, I'd tell each one of them." I said, "Don't tell any of my other wives, but I believe you're going to be my favorite." So she said, "Of course you are. I'm far more beautiful and more sexy than all your other wives put together." And I said, "Raquel, I like your attitude." And so she said, "Shut up and kiss me, my handsome husband." And I thought, wow, I am impressed. She also can read my mind. Now, the other thing that I have to tell you about is there's a word for it that escapes my mind right now. But it's not melancholy, but it's something along those lines. And that was when Dodie was in hospice, and she was there for 22 days before she passed away. I have to preface it by telling you that in the apartment that we had, we were at the Shore Towers, which is, you know, down the road here. There was a back porch, and at night when the sun went down, our bedroom, which had sliding glass doors that led out to that porch, it got jet black. It was dark in there. So we'd been married about 2 years, and one night we said goodnight, and I went to reach over and turn out the light. Right after I turned out the light, it hit me. And I said, "You know, Dodie, there's something wrong here." I said, "We're starting to act like an old married couple." I said, "Where's my goodnight kiss?" She said, "Do you really want it?" And I said, "Of course I do." So she said, "Well, come and get it." So I went to turn the light back on, and she said, "No, leave the light off." Well, I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. That's how dark it was. I said, "Dodie, at least give me a chance, you know. How about making some kissing sounds so I can find you? I can use my little bat radar and you know, focus in on your lips." So I said, "How about making some kissing sounds for me?" So she starts going, and then I'm going, and we met, you know. One night she refused to do it, and I wound up kissing her on the nose, and I said, "That's what you get for not making the kissing sound." Well, here we are in the hospice, and it was about 2 days before she passed away. And they had told me to stop giving her food. I had to sign off on that, to stop giving her drink. I had to sign off on that. And that's hard. I always used to say, how could people do that? But they said that the food, she'd gotten so weak that some of it got caught in her throat and had given her pneumonia. And then they said, water, she's so weak she can't swallow it, and if we keep giving her water, she'll drown. So it's in her best interest. And I thought, well, you know, God's in charge of this. He can do a miracle regardless. All the more glory to him when she's healed. So I signed off on that. She was getting weaker by the day. So that evening, you know, I stayed with her. They gave me a reclining chair to sleep in, and I stayed with her 24 hours a day. I had relatives that would come by and give me a break, so I'd go take a shower and shave, whatever. But anyway, so I was with her, and realizing that the end wasn't all that far away, I was crying. And I didn't want her to see that. I wanted her to be strong for her, because she'd been real strong the whole time. And at the end of the bed, right past her foot, I had my right arm extended out like this. I laid my head resting it on my arm, and I was just, tears were coming out like a flood. And I said, "Oh, honey, I love you so much." And I didn't let her see me. She was just laying there, and I didn't let her see me, but I think she must have heard the trembling in my voice, realizing that I was crying. So I was laying there like that after I said that, and I heard a familiar sound. I heard. And I took the clue. I reached up and over and kissed her more than once. But what a lovely memory to have. One of the other things she told me, she'd been married twice before, and before she left, she said, "Joe, there's something that you need to know." She said, "In my time with you as my husband, I've had more fun, more laughter, more sincere love than I had in both of my other marriages put together. One of them was 6 years, the other was 10. We were together 4 years and 3 months. That's quite a blessing to have your wife tell you that." And I'd like to close by sharing one of the poems you'll find in my book. During the course of our relationship, I wrote several love poems to her. And this one, the ladies seem to love. There's a particular passage that they get a kick out of in here. And I don't blame them. I think it's pretty cool too. But anyway, it's called My Wife. My wife's a bit of heaven, an extension of God's love. And when I look into her eyes, I thank my Lord above. My wife is quite a wonder, though only 5'3". With gentle grace and beauty, she takes good care of me. To me, my wife's a treasure. She's loved with all my heart. We'd never be unfaithful or from our love depart. Our love will live forever. My wife and I did vow. By the guidance of God's Spirit, His love will teach us how. My wife's my one and only. No other wife will do. Though Solomon had 500, honey, none were just like you. I thought my life was over. My lonely days were almost through. But God said, I have other plans. With love, He sent me you. Thank you. Now I have these. Thank you very much. I have this book available for sale if anyone's interested. It retails. My books, by the way, are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Sony Books, all the major sites that sell books. I have some in both ebook and print. And so if you'd like to get a copy, they sell for $10.95. And then, of course, there's shipping on that. Well, while I'm here today, what I'd like to do is offer them to anybody that's interested $10. Now, it's not a whole lot off, but these aren't cheap. You got some pictures in here. It costs money when you do that. And it's got a lot of pages, so I'm sure you would enjoy reading it. And then also, my other book is called Adventures in Navyland. It, too, sells for $10.95. Same thing, $10. But if you were to buy one of each, I give them to you for $18. So you'd be saving $4 of what you'd pay. And if you ordered, you'd be paying shipping and handling, all that kind of stuff, which I don't really enjoy paying that. But I'd like to share with you briefly a little bit about this book, because I think you'll enjoy Adventures in Navyland. There's 185 pages in it. And I'm a local guy. I was in the Navy and stationed at Bayboro Harbor down here in St. Pete when I was in the reserves. And this is about the adventures I had both in reserves and on active duty. And I was on board the ship that was called the Greenwood back in the 60s. And then the question that everybody asks, and I sometimes had asked myself, why did I choose the Navy? Well, it was during the Vietnam era, and I was too big a coward to run off to Canada and call myself an American citizen. So I stayed, and I said, they're not going to come looking for me. I'm going to go looking for them. So I asked the man who was manager of the hamburger place that I was working in. I was working part-time while I was going to school at St. Pete Junior College, and he'd been a first-class gunner's mate in the Navy during World War II. I said, why did you join the Navy? He said, very simple. He said, we had 3 full meals a day. I didn't have to go around eating rations. There was a laundry on board ship, so I didn't have to keep wearing the same clothes all the time. They had a nice warm bunk to sleep in. I wasn't sleeping in a wet trench somewhere. There weren't snipers shooting at me out of a tree or walking along stepping on mines. And they had a movie on board ship, and every other night we'd see a new movie. And he said, I thought if I had to go, let's do it in style. And I said, that sounds good to me, you know. I went right down and signed up. Make me in the Navy. You know? Well, I get in and I find out there's a few things he forgot to tell me. They had 3 full meals a day. Most of it was food you wouldn't want to feed to your worst enemy. They had a laundry on board ship, and although I'd stenciled in indelible ink my name and serial number, a lot of times some pieces of my laundry never made it back to me, and I'd have to buy new clothing. They had the nice warm bunk to sleep in. I got the top bunk. Right above my head were all these pipes. In the morning, they're doing reveille, reveille, all hands on deck, and I thought, oh, got to get up and get dressed, and I go, boing, and I actually did see red stars, blue stars, green stars, yellow stars. I keep forgetting they were there. I'm just getting out of bed and hurrying. And the guy would come up, come on, Callihan, you got to get ready. And I'm going, where am I? Anyway, and then the movie. They did have movies on board. And I said, great. Well, they turned the rear gun turret around. And this was in the 60s. And as you're watching the movie, you'd catch half of the movie, and half the time you're wiping the cinders out of your eyes from the smokestack that's blowing all the cinders in your way. So I found out there was a few things he left out about all this glamorous benefits that I would have. Well, when I went on active duty, I got stationed on board a ship going to Vietnam. And I was a third-class quartermaster by that time. I'm supposed to know how to steer a ship. Well, the Navy had sent me out to San Diego for a 28-day accelerated class in how to be a quartermaster. I barely got through it. And so then I came back, and there was a lieutenant and I in the room, and they gave me a test, 20 multiple guess. And I thought, well, let's see, I marked the last one B, so let's try D on this one, you know. And he was standing over my shoulder watching me, and he goes, are you sure that's the right answer? And I said, no, sir, I'm not sure about anything. I said, they're asking me questions on this test that didn't even come up in the course that I took. So he takes my hand, and he moved me to all the right answers. And he said, now, if anyone asks you, I didn't tell you anything. I didn't say anything. He didn't. He just moved me to the right answers. Then they give me this patch and said, congratulations, you're a third-class quartermaster. You're off on active duty. Go to the yards in Portsmouth, and here's the ship getting ready to go to Vietnam. I thought, I am in trouble because I'm supposed to steer this thing. You know, so about 2 weeks later, this Pennsylvania farm boy, his name was Tom Seth, comes on board, and I said, oh, he's got the same insignia I do. Maybe he can help, you know. So I came up to him, and, well, no, he came to me first, excuse me. He came to me, and he said, do you know what we're supposed to do? And I said, I was hoping you did. And he said, no, I just got out of this 28-day school. They gave me a test, they gave me a pats, and sent me off on acting. I said, oh, great, yeah. And so then we tried to get together with the chief quartermaster. He said, I'll meet you tonight, boys, and I'll show you everything you need to know. He'd go out with the chief signalman and get drunk. So that wasn't working too well. In the meantime, the guys on board ship, they hear we're going to Vietnam, and they're going, oh, no, Vietnam, Vietnam. I told them, calm down, calm down. There's nothing to worry about. I said, listen, with Seth and I steering this thing, if we can get it out of the yards here without running into another boat, then you can start worrying, because who knows where we're going to wind up. I said, if we wind up in Vietnam, it's just bad luck. I said, we might wind up in Russia for all I know with us steering this thing. Well, I called my grandmother and I said, guess where I'm getting to go? And she said, where? I said, Vietnam. She said, no, you're not. And I said, well, unfortunately, they got me on board a ship, and as soon as they get it fixed up, we're headed out to sea. And she said, well, you're not going to be on it. She said, I'm going to pray you off of that thing. About a month later, orders came in with my serial number and my name saying we need a third-class quartermaster in Panama. I wound up arranging their transit through the Panama Canal on their way to Vietnam. Now, I had fabulous duty when I got in Panama. I didn't even know a place like this existed. Worked in a block-long, 3-foot-thick, bomb-proof building. Had an electrolock door. The Navy had just an 8-block area inside of an Army fort called Fort Amador. We had a SEAL team in there that did covert activities all over South America. Tom Clancy did a book called Op Center. They made it into a movie. It was a really interesting book. He made me mad because he revealed a lot of the covert things that go on that he should have kept his mouth shut about. People don't need to know that stuff. But anyway, my job, I got to do part-time courier work, and that's drop off and pick up secret documents from other bases, Army, Air Force, and Navy bases. So that was really fascinating work. My contribution to national security is we got to do an exercise called the Helicon Vista 3. It was the third year they had it, and it's called the Hawk Seas. And we had all these high-ranking officers from different navies, Nicaragua, Colombia, you know, and various countries They had rented a Colombian merchant ship and put on board, we had our ensign on board, and they had people of that rank dressed as civilians, and they divided into two groups. And the people with the ship were getting course changes radioed to them, and they were to be a group of Cubans coming in to sabotage the canal and plant explosives, and the others had photo reconnaissance planes, and out of 45 ships going through the canal a day, they had to find out which one has the terrorist on it. So it was really interesting. In the meantime, these are admirals and vice admirals of their country. So about 2 days before they got there, our second in command, Lieutenant Commander Eppert, he was telling us where we worked. It was fascinating. I have all this secret material, secret documents, which really angers me about Hillary, because you have to sign a paper that says that you'll agree to protect that to the utmost. I did, and that if I didn't protect those secrets, that I could go to prison for the rest of my life. And I'll tell you, from the material I saw in secret materials, top secret and eyes only is very, very serious material, and she had no reason and no intelligence to put that on her server. That really annoys me, and I hope she winds up in prison for it. I'm sorry if that offends anybody. It's just the facts of life. Now, anyway, well, it's just a fact of life. If you don't like it, it's not my fault. It's her fault for doing what she did. Now, anyway, here's what happened. 2 days before these guys were due to show up, Lieutenant Commander Eppert told us, he said, there's certain areas of the op center that are off limits to these guys. In one of our file cabinet, we had the contingency plans if we had to go into their country and invade. We had where their bases were, what kind of arms they had, how many people they had. We had all of that already planned out, and had them in alphabetical order by country. Now, you know, somebody from another country would love to get a hold of that material on their own country and on neighboring countries. So he said, if any of these guys attempt to get in one of the files that they're told they're not allowed access to, he said, you stop them. He said, be polite, be diplomatic, and if necessary, be physical, but under no circumstances allow them into these files. Well, one guy raised his hand and said, but sir, I'm just a lowly third-class petty officer, and you're talking about admirals and vice admirals of their country. Won't I get in serious trouble if I have to lay one of them out? He said, you'll get in a hell of a lot more serious trouble if you allow them into the files. Well, I couldn't believe it. It was about the second day they were, having the exercise. They were in the teletype room, and Lieutenant Commander Eppert was addressing him. One of the guys came walking out, and he starts walking down, and he's heading straight towards his file that had information on his country and neighboring countries. And I said, I don't believe it. I ran and got in front of him, and I blocked his path, and I stood and crossed my arms, and I said, excuse me, sir, is there something I can help you find? And he said, yes, Lieutenant Commander Eppert sent me to get something from this file. And he's pointing, very sorry, sir, but this is one of the files you're not allowed access to. I said, if Lieutenant Commander Eppert wants something from this file, I'm afraid he's going to have to come and get it himself. He goes, are you a little peon trying to tell me Garcia, Rodriguez, Diego, Santiago, named after every relative, Vice Admiral of Nicaragua, that I am not to get in these files? And I said, well, I wouldn't put it exactly like that, but you do have the right idea. You are not getting in these files. And the way I looked at him was like, you give me a hard time and I'll drop you to the floor right where you're standing. So he looked at me and he said, I'm going to report you to Lieutenant Commander Eppert. And I said, please do, I could use an accommodation. So he walks back and he went to make his cut to go back into the teletype room, and when he did, I called out to him and I said, oh, and sir. And he turned around and looked at me. I said, by the way, I'm reporting you also. So I had the third-class guy that was working under me to go in, and I said, you tell Lieutenant Commander Eppert to get out here right now, that I need to see him. And so he comes out, and the lieutenant came out. I told him word for word exactly what had happened. He said, that is interesting. He told us he was going to the bathroom. So he left me, went into his office, made a telephone call, and then he said, in about 5 minutes, there's going to be 2 Navy intelligence guys show up. When they show up, come and get me, let me know they're here. They showed up and they said, would you please tell Lieutenant Commander Eppert it's time? I went in and I said, it's time. Come out, and he's got the admiral by the arm, and when they got clear of the doorway where the other admirals inside couldn't see what was going on, one Navy intelligence guy grabbed one arm, one grabbed the other, and they said, time for you to go home, Admiral. We got a plane fired up at Albrook Base. Don't worry about your stuff. Everything's being packed for you, and you're on your way out of here. So that was my contribution to national defense. I think y'all would enjoy it. It's really got some interesting reading in it. There's a lot of really interesting stories. But thank you very much for the opportunity to come and speak here today.
Jean, this dream's where you belong. Your golden journey.